1991 AD, 5885 AM. Operation Desert Shield becomes Operation Desert Storm, and US troops take an offensive against the Iraqi army in Kuwait and along the border as the Iraqis retreat, purposely setting fire to hundreds of Kuwaiti oil wells. The Iraqi army is overwhelmed by the technological and organizational superiority of the United States Army and is literally chased across the desert back into Iraq. By the thousands, the Iraqi soldiers surrendered to the US forces in February and were herded like cattle before the American armoured columns and sent back along the highway toward Baghdad, disoriented with no will to fight after 3 weeks of US-UK bombing. With Iraqis crowded all along the stretch of highway, President Bush committed an horrific war crime when he ordered US bombers to drop their payloads on the already defeated and fleeing Iraqi soldiers on February the 28th, blowing apart, burying alive and burning to death 150,000 Iraqi soldiers and support personnel. Whole crowds of men were blown to pieces. The Bush administration committed this war crime to please their Israeli Jewish handlers, for February the 28th was the Jewish holiday Purim, the day the Jews celebrate their victory over their enemies. The bodies of the 150,000 Iraqis were bulldozed into mass graves in the desert. The Jewish-controlled media neglected to report the matter to the American people. The Falasha Jews from Ethiopia are airlifted from Addis Ababa to Tel Aviv, Israel in May. In just 36 hours, 14,400 Ethiopic Jews were flown to Israel in a stunning migration. It is believed that these people are the blood descendants of Menelik I, the son of King Jedediah, Solomon, and an Egyptian princess queen called the Queen of Sheba. Georgia proclaims independence from the USSR, and the USSR changes its name to the Union of Soviet Sovereign Republics, as opposed to Socialist Republics. Azerbaijan declares its independence from the USSR, and the USSR is considered collapsed. China suffers its worst flooding since the 1930s. A cyclone strikes Bangladesh, India, killing 139,000 people. The famous Iceman is discovered frozen in the Italian Alps. The preserved frozen remains of an ancient human, estimated to be 5,300 years old, believed to have died from hypothermia. 1. Synagogue of Satan. 2. 20th century events. 1992 AD, 5886 AM. In the 6300th year of the Phoenix chronology, begun in 4309 BC, highly sensitive detection equipment in Hawaii discovered a tiny reddish spot of light far out beyond the edge of the solar system, proving the existence of the Kuiper belt. This object is called 1992 QB1. Astronomers Jewett and Liu discovered the object and took several photographs. It is of indeterminate size due to its distance, but it is moving rapidly. Dr. Richard Harrington of the US Naval Observatory and Dr. Thomas C. Van Flandern calculated that an intruder planet was located in the southern skies, below the ecliptic, and he sent a telescope to New Zealand to find it. Unfortunately, Dr. Harrington died an untimely death. In 1992, several independent remote viewers reported that they perceived a giant vessel moving at the edge of our solar system, described as more than 200 kilometres long. They described that it rotated, creating its own gravity field so people could walk around inside. Unknown to these remote viewers, 2 months earlier, but published later, the, quote, most distant body in the solar system, unquote, was discovered by a Hawaiian telescope, a planetoid estimated to be approximately 100 to 200 kilometres in size, called 1992 QB1. Toward the end of 1992, a telescope in Spain also viewed the object. This was the 90th year of the Giza Course countdown, begun in 1902 AD, a last day's countdown. 90 years is 1080 months. The Great Pyramid was begun in 2905 BC and required 90 years of labour to complete in 2815 BC, which was the year 1080 Annus Mundi, after 1080 months of construction. 1992 AD is 4896 years, 2448 plus 2448, after the start of Giza construction in 2905 BC. The sum of 2448 paralleling the year 2448 Annus Mundi, or 1447 BC, when the Israelites escaped Egypt, led by Moses in the Exodus. The Israelites had lived in Goshen, the land surrounding the Great Pyramid. In this year, Rudolf Gantenbrink sent up a special robot up a shaft inside the Great Pyramid, extending up into the masonry from the Queen's chamber, where the robot discovered and photographed a mysterious, virtually inaccessible tiny door with a copper handle. Interestingly, at the Chicago meeting of American Association for the Advancement of Science, an impassioned debate intended only to last an hour became a news conference and then personal confrontations in the hallway as scientists and researchers argued over the precise antiquity of the Sphinx before the Great Pyramids. In the 216th year, 108 plus 108, of the United States since 1776, America suffered the worst hurricane in its history when Hurricane Andrew devastated Florida. The Federal Emergency Management Agency was funded and designed to handle such a disaster. Officially, but unofficially, FEMA helped no one. The incident was a FEMA disaster. Instead of aiding the storm survivors, quote, FEMA cordoned off the area and left the people to fend for themselves, unquote. The official death toll was a blatant lie, and locals later tried to inform the media that many thousands had died. But no one in American media listened. The survivors wandering the wreckage of 8230 mobile homes and 9,140 apartments related that the dead numbered in the many thousands from the 200 to 300 mile-an-hour winds. It has been reported that 5280 human bodies were disposed of in FEMA-operated incinerators. For 4 days until May 3rd, blacks in Los Angeles riot and loot the city, killing 58 people, mostly whites, in protest of the acquittal of 4 white Los Angeles police officers who had been filmed beating down a black gangster named Rodney King. The incident was totally controlled by the local and national media, which portrayed King as a law-abiding citizen, and the footage shown to the public was only of the 4 officers subduing King to the ground with sticks. The media did not show the public the beginning of the footage, which clearly depicted King resisting arrest and then, without provocation, assaulting an officer and then fighting the others. The racial rioting and murders resulted in $750 million worth of damage to property. Comet P. Swift-Tuttle appeared, passing 110 million miles from Earth, on November the 7th. Scientists in 1992 discovered that the human brain has trace amounts of magnetite, which explains why electromagnetic fields alter brain chemistry and experience. This is dangerous for humanity, for the Anunnaki manipulate electromagnetic frequencies, knowing humans only perceive about 5% of the spectrum, inducing humans to see whatever it is that the Anunnaki want them to see and perceive. Further, the weapons of the future are manufactured even now, electromagnetic technologies for which there is no defense. 1. Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid. 2. Phenomenal World. 3. Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center disaster. 6. March of the Titans. 7. Atlantis in America.